Well, welcome to the program. I am Keaton Shaw, and a very good morning to you. I hope all is well with you. I hope you had a great weekend, and, well, hope is a beautiful word to use when Trinidad and Tobago, you know, there's some good news around, yes, of which we can speak about, but the majority of the news this morning is obviously rather depressing. There was a murder of a 15-year-old boy over the weekend. Police are searching for a 14-year-old in connection with that. 5 people were injured in a drive-by shooting. Tobago recorded its 3rd murder in 3 weeks. You know, and I can continue, but, you know, it's a brand new day. It's a brand new week here in our beautiful Twin Island Republic. And hopefully, as we started the program, and I will continue, things will get better. Alongside me this morning is my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. It's a beautiful day in TNT, at least in our part of the country. Can't necessarily speak for all of it. News is not really looking nice. This is one of the reasons why, when I don't have to do it for my job, keeping track of the news. And the unfortunate thing is, we're not even talking about the political nonsense that you see, or the lack of any sort of true leadership and ideas and character and what have you. Just the crime reporting. And I think what people need to understand is, yeah, we understand crime is a lot, but if the papers really wanted to, the entire newspaper could probably just be crime stories. Almost the entire newspaper. Especially depending on the time of year, you can even get all the letters to the editor, all the columns. But with the stories themselves, and we do have to ask, you know, what is it? Is it just because times are tough? I mean, some people don't have jobs and they're struggling to get by. Other people have jobs and they're robbing security vans. So, I don't know what to say, especially with some of the, and especially with one of the crimes that we're going to get into later today. Some of this is just so unnecessary, and I mean, is it that we didn't know about these things in the past, in the 70s and the 80s, but now with social media and the demands of a 24-hour news cycle, the expectation to get these stories out are higher than before? Or is it that we lost something? You know, the country grew a little bit more, and somewhere along the road of progress we lost something, or we were influenced by something, and this is the result.
Well, that's quite a lot to unpack. But, depressing as it may be, put a pause on that. Let's speak about, you know, progress in itself is the future of one political party, as the People's National Movement internal elections are due very soon. This morning is nomination day, and quite a bit of things have already made the news. A bit of a stir. Of course, we're all aware that Karen Sishera, a commentator here on WESN's Talking Points, as well as a former Minister of Finance and attorney at law, former Member of Parliament, well, she's challenging incumbent Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, for the post of leader, political leader of the party. But also some interesting posts as well up for grabs. All 16 up for grabs. But Faris Arawi is challenging Laurel Azamalising for the post of Public Relations Officer. I say challenging because she is the incumbent. I'm not entirely sure if she's going to go back up for the post again. But it is a position that he held before, I think in 2014. And to me, one of the other interesting ones is Stuart Young challenging Colm Imbert for the position of chairman of the political party. Again, not entirely sure if Colm Imbert is going back up for the position. But to me, those are the 3 most significant. Karen Sishera to begin with, actually. I mean, we had a conversation with her last week. Since then, we've heard a lot of commentary. The various political commentators and political analysts and political scientists, they've indicated that it's an uphill battle.
Yes.
I think one of our callers last week from San Fernando pointed out that the way that the PNM's party's elections and constitution is designed, it really is fitting for the incumbent leader, the political leader, to retain that position. But Personally, in my opinion, I think political analysts, political scientists have actually stated the obvious, that it's going to be an uphill battle. You know, of course, we always wish Karen the best. However, I think it would be short-sighted of us to not acknowledge the fact that it is going to be very, very difficult for Karen Nunes-Teixeira to actually take that position away from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. The question is whether or not people within the party, because she said she was approached from people within the party, exactly who they are, she didn't reveal, and whether or not she has a slate, exactly if members of the current executive and members within the parliament, if they're disenfranchised with the Prime Minister.
I mean, therein lies the question, is there any sort of conflict that will be allowed to be seen publicly? So the question as to, are the incumbents defending the post that other members of cabinet are challenging, or other members of parliament are challenging? One of the things that I will always go back to is, at the end of the day, Keith Rowley was in that position where his challenge failed. But it did, in my opinion at least, help him reach the point where he is considered the natural second choice. And if you need an alternative, if something happens to the incumbent, if the incumbent decides to step down, or if things get bad enough where the party is willing to vote in the next person, you do want to position yourself in politics. So it's not so simple, because you can't lose an election and be the number 2 option forever, right? In some cases it does happen. And in other cases, the mandate of, well, we don't want you, kind of seals your fate, and you need to step down, because you're not really, they don't want to waste time letting you go up again and again and again. What's the point? Because whoever you're running against is most likely going to win. That's kind of wasting the process, in a way. So it's not so simple. But then we also have to ask, what exactly would be realistic expectations, and what exactly would be realistic objectives? Because one of the things is, like, when people say about a third party, the mistake is, well, they need to make a difference, make a dent in parliament immediately. It's like, why? Even if they don't get any seats in the first election, right? Look at the COP. I believe in the first election they got votes, but they didn't get any seats. And then the election after that, they got seats. But then the downfall, the trajectory went back downwards when they joined a coalition that took their identity away. So now, in this situation now, it's an eternal election, right? Karen might not necessarily be she might be too old to go through this process, to be fair. But in the sense of, even if she were to lose now, it's a process. If there's a slate of people who disagree with how the party is going, they could still keep at it for the next internal election, But a party leader is every 4 years, from what I understand.
Yes, because the next election is in 2026.
At some point, because most people going up for that post are not going to be in their 30s. So they could only go through so many, attempts before they're just like, well, I can't anymore.
Well, I'll be very honest with you. I think with Karen, one of the let me not say issues, but one of the factors that you should consider is that Keith Rowley may not be the most ideal Prime Minister. And I mean that with respect, because he said he did his job. One can argue whether or not he did his job, but he's held on to the position. He's faced many a task, and he's had to deal with situations such as COVID-19. Yeah. But in terms of a statesman, or in terms of somebody who can actually speak to the nation and share with what the nation is feeling, or relate to the nation, I would argue that Keith Rowley is not the most favorable for that position. However, in contrast to that, Keith Rowley was probably, and still is probably, the most, probably the strongest personality and the strongest character to hold the position of political leader of the People's National Movement. Because say what you want about him, I am still of the opinion that even if he says things that are crass, completely unnecessary, and sometimes downright stupid. If you put him on a political platform to debate, and debate is a very contentious word here because it depends on how you define debate. But if you put him on a platform to debate anybody else, I think that he will come up trumps. You know, there may be some people such as, such as Dinesh Rambali or
who might, in a technical field, might be able to out-debate him in certain...
Right.
Okay,
but I think still, okay, if you put Keith Rowley against Kamala Prasad-Biswas, or Keith Rowley against people within the People's National Movement right now, I think he'll blow them out of the water. So he's certainly the strongest individual, the strongest character to lead the People's National Movement. The trick is not to lead Trinidad and Tobago. And as you pointed out, parties such as the NAR, such as the People's Partnership, they have had to have coalitions to oust the PNM. The PNM has never had to do that. So regardless of who's political leader at the end of the day, the PNM will remain a strong party in the views of its most loyal supporters.
But the problem with that, the NAR was a different situation. But we saw in the People's Partnership, I immediately was flabbergasted that a coalition is going to try to base their re-election campaign with all of the contention that happened during their that first term that they had, that first and only term. They're going to center it on a vote Kamala. And it's not about questioning Kamala's, how good she was as a candidate. It was about the fact that this is a coalition made by more than two parties. It wasn't just even just the COP and the UNC. It also included, I believe at one point, the MSJ, the TOP and Tobago, and I think at least one other party that I can't remember right now. So when you see Vote Kamala, and it was the most disastrous in Tobago, and she went in Tobago, but Tobagonians aren't voting for a UNC candidate. They're not even voting for they weren't even voting for a UNC candidate for Tobago West and Tobago East. It was a TOP candidate who has its own political leader, who has its own political agenda and identity that deserve to some extent its own respect. The COP as well.
Okay, now link this to the internal election.
Okay, well, my point is, right, with regards to needing a coalition, what you made to oust the PNM, I'm not entirely sure if I want to see a coalition. Okay, I think I would prefer to see a third party put in the work, put in the time. That means that depending whoever the political leader is, their career might end before they actually see the end goal. But is it for your own ambitions or is it for the benefit of the nation? Now with that said, I do think that unfortunately in Parliament right now, Keith Rowley is one of the better candidates we have for Prime Minister. Because you said it yourself, you compared him to the PNM and people in the UNC. And I think that while, yes, I could do without his communication style at times, at the very least, and I could do without certain decisions he makes, some of the tough choices I can't disagree with. The flip side is those were the obvious, to me, the obvious necessary choices you had to make. Now, will there be other people in the PNM who could do that? I don't know. I really am doubtful.
I understand your point as it relates to the coalition. I think we just have not gotten a coalition right just as yet, because one political leader is consumed by influence and power. We saw that with Kamala. So I understand the point, but for the PNM internal elections specifically, this situation, I think also with Keith Rowley, you can certainly argue whether or not he is a true leader. I mean that in the sense that, yes, maybe he has had to make tough decisions, and he has stood firm by it. But at what point also, as a leader, do you accept criticism, and at what point also do you take action on it? For example, he still has not taken action against non-performing members within his cabinet. And I think the most prominent example, in my opinion, has always been the Minister of National Security. Now, I think a Minister of National Security will constantly face criticism, right? But it's how you respond and how you act. And he has not taken that level of responsibility with reprimanding his own members of his cabinet. And I don't think he's actually done enough as a leader to put people in the best positions, or the best people in the most suitable positions, right? The other angle, now, which is very interesting, and this is where we see the future of the People's National Movement. Stuart Young, who has been there since 2015, as he has been the Member of Parliament for Belmont. It falls under Belmont. I've forgotten the name of the constituency now. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. But he has been the Member of Parliament there since 2015. He's now going up for chairmanship, and he's challenging, as I said, I don't know whether or not Colm Imbert is going back up, but Colm Imbert is the current chairman of the People's National Movement. Stuart Young is going for that position. Whether or not that signals that this is Colm Imbert's last term as an active member of the People's National Movement in terms of government. He could still work in the background, but whether or not he's still going to be there. That has often been debated. I don't think whether or not retaining the position of chairman actually says that. You could be chairman of the party and not be a member of parliament or a government minister. However, if he does not go up for the position, I think that signals a lot.
Well, I mean, yes or no, do you need to have an executive position in the party formally to be somebody in cabinet with a lot of rank and authority, right? Because at the end of the day, circle of equals, but then some are more equal than others, not just the Prime Minister. With regards to Colm Imbert, one of the things that you do have to wonder is, again, it might seem kind of harsh, but the age of politicians right now in America, Joe Biden's critics are questioning his age. With regards to Dr. Keith Rowley, as much as his age is similar to Joe Biden's, I believe they're both in their early to mid 70s. It's obvious that Keith Rowley looks better, has more vigor. He could do the job physically, or at least he could seem to do the job more physically better than someone that looks as frail as the American president. Colm Imbert is not young either. To what extent now is he future planning here, and maybe he's thinking about retirement. Maybe he doesn't want to do anymore. He doesn't need to do anymore. One of the interesting things is this last term probably is one of the most stressful terms that any government has had to go through within the last 40 years, basically, and since the NAR government, right? No PNM or UNC administration kind of had to deal with something like this. Maybe, I don't know if there's any of the NAR left in the UNC, right? But the politicians who were there, Robinson, Manning, and even Mr. Pandey, they're not there anymore. So we had a lot of relatively young politicians having to, deal with something like that. To what extent are the older ones in the bunch saying, I don't have the energy anymore after trying to deal with this crisis? Okay,
but then take a look at the individuals who was brought in. For example, I look at the best example was Daryl Smith. He didn't last beyond the term. Shamful Kojo. So whether or not these are the young individuals, one individual who I must say that has had flaws, as with every politician, but certainly still I appreciate, I suppose, her way of doing things is Dr. Niang Gatsby Dolly. So there are some young individuals who were brought into each party has done well. But as we conclude, the two questions I must now ask is, one, do politicians know when it is time to step out of that position and give somebody else a chance? Because quite frankly, I think the best example of that is Kamala Persad-Bissessar. I don't know why she's still the political leader of the United National Congress. One might argue there's nobody else to replace her, but there are lots of young people in the party who have had opportunity and who have done well thus far. There's some of them who are completely disappointed and just toting a party line, rhetoric to keep a position. And the second question is, who is the future of the People's National Movement? Because I think in 2025, when the general election is called, though Keith Rowley will be the political leader, or most likely is to be, because you never know with Karen Eunice-Teixeira. Things are very, very surprising.
Well, and the voters.
Who is going to be? Who is the future of the People's National Movement? Is it Karen Eunice-Teixeira, or is it somebody else?
The other thing is that I've heard whispers that there might be other people coming out. Maybe that's going to amount to nothing. With regards to succession planning, though, the unfortunate thing about it is, And I guess this is why the candidates and the representatives kind of look less and less as you go through the generations, because there's too much concern about retaining their position and not enough thought about the fact that, yes, I could retain my position, but I could never hold it indefinitely. No one could beat Father Time, is the saying that they have in sports. And it's true for politics too. It's just that the careers tend to be later in life as opposed to earlier in life, right? So no one could beat Father Time. Again, what is your priority? What is your motivations and intentions? Is it for the good of the country? Because if it is, if you're looking at a higher purpose, you are worried about succession planning, because you know that the risk of every positive thing that you have put in place and the direction, if you manage to get the country in a positive direction, of somebody coming in to ruin all of that. And you see that in the private sector at all levels of the scale with regards to management and any sort of leadership position. So now in politics now, when you talk about the whole country, you're not supposed to be willing to take that risk and say, well, I am here for my career and whatever happens after me happens after me. Well, no, to me that is a sign, and it's kind of two signs that goes hand in hand, right? You only protecting yourself and not caring about what comes after. It's a sign of selfishness, and you know, the results are the bad results you see around the globe, because most countries are Western democracies, at least in the Caribbean, and the results vary.
Well, I think a full list of candidates will be posted tomorrow by the People's National Movement, but a close eye on this, because a budget was just read. There is the local government elections due to come up. Whether or not that actually changed the face of the party, it is more so the future of the party going into next year and for 2025. So we will keep a close eye on this. But ladies and gentlemen, we break now here on Talking Point. When we return, well, we'll get into that topic that my co-host would have mentioned earlier as it relates to crime and the repercussions or results of a situation that is exploding or has exploded, and nobody seems to care. We'll be right back after this.
Delivered nationwide. Kissed enriched bread.
Fill your day with love.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion.
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Talking Points. As we continue the conversation this morning, let us look at a situation which I suppose is not new to us. So I don't think it should have taken us entirely by surprise, as it did with one particular government minister, and that is Fitzgerald Hines, the Minister of National Security. But this is to the U.S. government, Washington, D.C.'s advisory for Trinidad and Tobago, which is at level 2. But a level 4 advisory for Port of Spain was also issued. So generally, the U.S. is advising against its citizens traveling to Trinidad and Tobago to take a serious precaution when traveling to Trinidad and Tobago. However, a level 4 advisory said the U.S. government personnel are prohibited from traveling to several areas, including all beaches, claiming that violent crimes such as murder, robbery, assault, sexual assault, home invasion, and kidnappings are common. They've also warned against terrorism, saying that terrorists may attack with little or no warning, targeting tourist locations, transportation hubs, etc., etc. Now, the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, responded saying there's been no major terrorist activity for many years, perhaps since not 1990. And I quote directly from the Minister of National Security, Sean. Listen to what our Minister of National Security has to say about this. We have had little bombings about the place. Unfortunately, someone lost a leg. And we haven't had that experience. And thank God. What? I will repeat it for you one more time, ladies and gentlemen. We have had little bombings about the place. Unfortunately, someone lost a leg. And we haven't had that experience. And thank God. End quote. This is from the Minister of National Security in response to this. Now, again, advisories are nothing uncommon. In fact, the U.S. State Department issues it for each country across the world. In this instance, it's just, again, once more, a sign of the position of Trinidad and Tobago and the perception of Trinidad and Tobago to the outside world.
And I think it's also the perception of the citizens with regards to this report, because to some extent we were under travel advisory for more or less much of what we see here we saw last year. To be fair to those from the US Embassy and Minister Amory Brown, who is saying that this is not necessarily new, right? I'm not entirely sure where the COVID update part is, like if you're going to word it quite this way, that the, people are going to misconstrue it, that the emphasis is on the crime. When I say misconstrue, unintentionally, if it might be interpreted that way, right? However, it was released. So that's interesting. But the fact that this is the perception of the country by the United States government is at least a year old, if not older than a year. And with regards to the citizenry now, I do have to wonder to what extent was the reporting effective enough to communicate the fact, like when we had the stories reporting about this, when the opposition decided to criticize the Minister of National Security. And listen, don't get me wrong, they have a right to criticize the Minister of National Security, because at the end of the day, even if the status was maintained, this is not something that should become the baseline norm with regards to U.S. Embassy personnel must not go to certain regions because of a fear of crime. We're not talking about must not go to some obscure corner of a bush where there's nothing and no one and no lights and security and no one living and who knows what can happen to you there. We're talking about areas of the capital.
The U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Ambassador's residence is in Port of Spain.
It's in Port of Spain. And there are areas of the capital that they just must not go to. So, yes, he could be criticized about the status quo, but to say that this is something of like a new development that came out of nowhere. We literally, on Talking Point, spoke about the travel advisory sometime last year. Because it was, I think, when it was COVID took up a good amount of the press, but the situation with regards to the crime and embassy personnel must not travel to some extent was always there, as Minister Brown is stating. So, on one hand, I'm telling the public, good people, don't panic. It's not as though things got worse overnight. The flip side is things didn't get better. Things are bad, and it did not get better.
And I think, Sean, that is precisely the point. For the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs to make a statement, well, this is nothing really new. Mm-hmm. I think that in itself is an issue, because as much as I say that, okay, we were aware about these warnings before, it was reissued. Port of Spain specifically once more was mentioned. The word prohibited was used. All U.S. personnel are prohibited. You can't even go to the beach. So essentially, an ambassador has no leisure. Well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The word prohibited is used, and that is very, very serious. I don't think people understand in terms of diplomatic relations how serious that is. For the minister to then come out and say, well, this is really nothing new, to me, it shows a complete lack of care. $200,000 was allocated to basically market Trinidad and Tobago. And I say market Trinidad and Tobago because it's to, try and change the perception of Trinidad and Tobago.
$200,000 for who?
For the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
I mean, first of all, according to tourism, people in the tourism industry, and maybe it's a different thing, but $200,000 sounds like a drop in the bucket that's not going to do anything with regards to marketing the country.
That was what was allocated. But to me, it shows a complete lack of care.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what, this is nothing new. Don't bother me about this. This was always here. Quite frankly, mere fact that nothing has been done to change it over the years.
Exactly.
That is where the issue lies. And again, I keep pointing it out. When you have instances like this with the Minister of National Security making such, I don't even know how to describe his comments. I've run out of words.
I mean, you kind of have to even ask, did the reporter get it all? But then you can't necessarily doubt that the reporter got it all.
Even if the reporter didn't get it all, those two lines
alone. Because for a reporter to quote, is it grammar? Incomplete sentence. I'm pretty sure that any reporter with their salt would have gone through and made sure this is what he said, syllable for syllable.
I think that, because that article in particular, I'm reading from a regional news carrier, right? And I think he was falling asleep on himself again. Because for him to say that, and then Dr. Amory Brown to state that, I've said it before, you've said it before, simply, they like it that way, so they leave it that way. They don't care about it, so they leave it that way. Or somebody somewhere is benefiting, so they leave it that way.
No, part of it is, you have to be fair and not criticize. It's not fair to say, oh, look how bad we got last week. We have this new advisory. No, criticize them to be fair, because they're going to get hung up on the fact that, hey, this is new, and they're going to waste time defending that. Right? And, again, it isn't fair to criticize them for a new travel advisory. But your point with regards to the communication style, by not acknowledging the fact that, yes, bad news is not new, does not make the bad news go away. Right? The bad news still exists.
I'm not criticizing them.
And it's old and it's long term.
Because of the new advisory.
It's the messaging.
I'm criticizing them because the new advisory is the end result or the result of their lack of actions over the years to deal with the situation, and successive governments, if I may say so, to deal with a crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago.
It's not just an end result, Keaton. We had this result last year. It's been the status quo
and the mere
for
fact
at least a year.
And the mere fact, and that doesn't justify the mere fact that was reissued.
Yeah.
The mere fact that was reissued says a lot. Wait, look, Trinidad and Tobago is on course for 500 murders plus.
No, yeah, plus.
Right, by the end of the year. Right? Tobago had 3 murders in 3 weeks, 8 murders for the year thus far.
I think at one point you were counting Tobago's murders with your hands.
With one hand. With one hand. There were times when you would have no murders or 3 murders.
The 3rd murder was an event.
Right?
For the year.
3 murders in 3 weeks. All this is taking place. And quite frankly, Sean, I am not entirely sure where these individuals are sitting at, what it is they're seeing, what it is they're hearing, what it is they're witnessing. But quite clearly, people on the ground are the ones who are facing it. People on the ground are the ones who are suffering. And at the end of the day, they could sit on their high horses with a suit and tie, which, yes, it looks nice. I like a suit and tie. But what's the point if it is you're going to be high and mighty and not do absolutely anything about it?
And that's why not only is the problem the fact that this has been the status quo as perceived by a major international trading partner, ally, what have you, but also the fact that by limiting your messaging to saying, well, you know, this is not new, so, you know, everything's fine. Look somewhere else for a problem. You know, to paraphrase, by limiting the message, it goes back to what you were saying. Acknowledge the fact that we do have a problem. Don't just focus on, well, you know, don't focus on, this is not new, so don't study it. No, it's still something worthy for people to be concerned about. And by not acknowledging that, the messaging is so poor, because it goes back to what you said. Do you actually care about the situation, or are you just happy that the U.S. travel advisory is technically not new news?
Again, my final point on this is simple. When we look at solutions, I would like to know, and I'm pretty sure many people out there would like to know, what is our intelligence gathering like? What is our proactive policing like? What is our evidence? What is our national security like? What is that infrastructure like? Because all that being said, you have police officers who are afraid to go in certain areas. They know who these individuals are. The police officers themselves are afraid to go in certain areas. They're unwelcome. They're not allowed to go. Imagine that. Imagine that in a country that is the case. That police officers are too scared to go. They're not allowed to go. Criminals are running the streets, ruining the streets. That is what is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. So, don't get me wrong, the police service know who these individuals are. The government know who these individuals are. They have some citizens who know who these individuals are. Right? Those are the ones ruling the streets with bloodshed, fear, violence, drugs, guns, you name it. We all know who they are. But what is done about it? And why is nothing done about it? Because somebody somewhere is benefiting. Quite clearly.
Somewhere is benefiting, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
At the end of the day, or rather, a lot of people in different ways are benefiting. And it's a web that is very difficult to detangle. Because it's not just, oh, this drug lord here, or this union there. There's a lot of benefits to go around because the system is built upon its inadequacies and inefficiencies.
And as far as I'm concerned, we could say, have more police patrols.
No, that's not gonna.
Exactly.
No.
You think having more police patrols, to a certain extent, it might help the petty thief on the road. But you see this gun violence and this crime that is completely out of control, this drug trade.
Gun violence.
Hey, they're bigger fish to fry. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break on the program now. When we return, well, hopefully we'll be joined by a media ambassador of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. He was with us last week, and he might be with us again this morning, acting ASP Ashraf Ali. We'll be right back after this.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot. Inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
My mom has been shopping here for the last 15 years. So coming here with her, now I have my own family.
The variety of items, cleanliness of the place, the spaciousness.
My favorite section is household.
My
My husband loves the hardware section and the auto section. My favorite would be stationery.
Price Club is the low price leading supermarket in TNT.
They are the best. I would recommend Price Club to anybody.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Just when you thought you knew about essences, Chief Brand has changed the game. Whether you splash, dash, or sprinkle, these and others have been perfected and bottled just for you. Chief Essences by Chief Brand Products.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
Politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Today I'm excited because we're talking about medicine the Gray's way. Yes, we're talking to Dr. Raquel Supir from Gray's Medical.
Because now I realized, like, the secret, the key.
If you give somebody the body they want or the confidence that they're looking for, and you make sure that they know that they have to work really hard to keep it, guess what? They're going to be really healthy.
Tell us a little bit about stretching and the importance of what it is or what it does to your body.
It is really important to stretch your muscles. You can stretch before and after working out. It can limit or reduce your injury, also able to improve your flexibility.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Well, welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. Sean Michael Small and myself were now joined by Acting ASP Ashraf Ali. Good morning, sir. Welcome back to Talking Point.
Good morning again. It's nice to be here.
Once again.
Well, this morning, you're once more in the hot seat because of this incident that took place at Coque San Fernando, in which an off-duty SRP, Special Reserve Police Officer, who was moonlighting as a security guard for a supermarket, got into a scuffle with Jamie Walker, father of three. Jamie Walker ended up dying after being fatally shot by the acting SRP. I'm saying acting SRP. SRP. The SRP was questioned by police, said the individual was smoking unusually long cigarette with a very odorant plunger, stating that it's marijuana he was smoking. So it was a scuffle over a parking space. Now hearing from the SRP it's over marijuana, and that the individual tried to grab the gun. Now witnesses at the scene said that this is not true. Before we question you, sir, I think, Sean, you have a video of the wife of the victim, Mr. Jamie Walker.
Yeah, we have a video. Doesn't necessarily have a lot of details with regards to what happened, but this is her account. So if we could, the wife Heather Sedino Walker.
I was right inside here and I see them arguing. I want to call the person Shirani. Can I say, there's someone always arguing and say, my Shirani, I go so it always should be. I tell them about me, come and they can't think, man. And then they stop and they think, and he just pull out the gun, no reason, just pull out the gun and he just fire 3 shots. Yeah. Nah, well, when I went over, when he lied on the ground, I see like one wound on the belly. So I rode into the pharmacy and tell Maxim all what to do. He said, put a cloth and press it. But the guy who did the shooting said, no problem, don't want to do it. He's a person, he don't really, he's right back, you know. I don't know, that's unbelievable. He could defend himself, he's like soldier.
All right, so that was just a brief account from the wife of the victim. Now, let me start this conversation, acting SP, by asking, it's an SRP, but in any instance of a police officer, once you're off duty and you're exiting the station, is it now that you have to lodge your firearm in the station, or are these officers of varying ranks who are allowed to carry their weapon with them home?
Right, so firstly, I just want to say condolences to the family. It's an unfortunate situation that is currently being investigated. As you see the clip there, we will always get some different viewpoints, but anytime you lose a life in a situation like where a police officer involved, so it's a police officer involved in a shooting, an investigation will take place. Now, with respect to the fact that they are saying that he's a Special Reserve Police Officer, he has been working, moonlighting and all those issues, those things will come out in this investigation to determine whether they have truth and what were the circumstances. Now, one thing that we have to understand is that if police officers, there's varying types of police officers that can carry firearms and circumstances that they were allowed to carry firearms. In any police service, we normally will have what they call keep and carry. That's a circumstance where your life may be at threat. There's a risk assessment, and under the directions of the Commissioner of Police, an officer will be given a service firearm to keep. There are police officers who also have personal firearms where they have their own FUL to keep their own FULs on their person, so they have their firearms with respect to that. And then when they come to work, there are officers who will sign for a firearm and go on perform duties. So those are the 3 areas where you would expect to have an officer having a firearm with him. However, if you have your personal firearm and going to do duties, it is not advisable that you use your personal firearms while you're on duty. There are some issues with respect to that. You can lodge your firearm, and once it's an official duty, you lodge your firearm, take up a government issue firearm, and go and proceed on to the duties. Special Reserve Police officers are different in the context that some Special Reserve Police officers are part-timers. They have 2 jobs. There are Special Reserve Police officers who are also security officers, and they also perform part-time job as a police officer when they're not on the actual duty with the security companies. So the circumstances surrounding that firearm and what he was doing at that location is currently being investigated. And as soon as we get all the finance with respect to that, it will be brought to the attention through the Commissioner of Police.
Well, also, I don't know whether or not this SRP was actually working for a security company. I think that will also come out. But it's interesting that an individual was shot for allegedly smoking marijuana. The officer said he tried to grab his firearm, and then the SRP may have actually been working with his firearm off duty, which I think you just said it's not advisable. You know, so there's a lot of focus on this now because it's an SRP1. I think people have immediately put aside the fact that he was moonlighting as a security officer. Because he is labeled as a police officer, there's a lot of focus on this. I think the answer is obvious, but you know, just to basically re-educate us, isn't there training in instances such as this, where officers will have knowledge on how to handle these situations?
There is, and we continue to say that there's training and retraining along that. But let's look at it from a different angle, holistically.
Sure.
We are a violent country at this point in time, and our commissioner has indicated that on several platforms, that the level of violence that we see. So I do not want to simplify this situation, but just bring the public to understand where we reach any circumstance where we have conflict and we do not know how to handle a conflict. I don't want to use that situation. So let me put that situation aside. But let's use a general situation. We know that many businesses don't have parking spaces in front of, they don't provide for parking. And we know that you may go to a location, park at one location, go across and do business on another location. These are this is something that is not unique. It happens on a regular basis. A person's park at different locations and go and carry the business at different business places. The issue we can look at it from this perspective. That conflict could have been alleviated. Both parties contributed to it, how they reacted to that situation, and how we as a people react to situations of this nature. Could it have been dealt with differently? Could the officer have spoken to the person in a different manner? Could that person have acknowledged that, yes, I did not park in a particular location and move?
Sure. Because the wife did say that the victim was an ex-army officer who can and is prone to defend himself in that sort of confrontational situations. So I guess now the question is, yes, he could have done something, because we've said it before on the show, where it's like, look, at the end of the day, don't even engage with the police. It's a losing battle. Even if you're in the right, you could still lose your life, and it doesn't matter if you were right.
Well, imagine that you're stating that now, even if you're in the right, you could still lose your life.
Yes.
And you know, as much as we're saying that TNT is a violent society, and you know, we appreciate you coming on the show and educating the public and the efforts of the TTPS to try and interact with the public. I think there's that level of mistrust, which I stated before, which Sean have stated before. Because the other part is, I agree with you, sir, on the fact that I don't understand why in Trinidad and Tobago, or anywhere for matter of fact, you have to put signs on your gate saying, please don't block the driveway. You know, active driveway, please don't block the gate. I don't understand why we ever have to do that. I don't know why people are so stupid and inconsiderate to park in front of gates.
That's the one time where I think wreckers should, you know, no. I will never question a wrecker for taking a car in front of somebody's
And
gate.
the other side of it as well, I also understand, if it's a business establishment's parking space, why are you parking there if you're going to another business establishment? You know, so I understand all that, I get that. But, is that a crime? Are they committing a crime by blocking a gate or by parking in another business's spot?
And that is how we view certain things, and that I'm saying. How we treat with certain situations, the outcome, we have to live with the outcome. Now, let's look at the business place as one aspect of it. What about your home? What are we doing? We realized that we had a home invasion recently in Mayaro, and ironically, it was a gated community, so I'm not going to say that we need to protect because they had some level of protection in that gated community. And you still had persons breaching that sanctity of the person's home and trying to violate your private space. Now, we as Trinidadians need to understand that these are real situations that we're talking about, and there are possibilities of, and we have heard a lot of home invasions over the years where persons, and we saw videos, people take videos and post up videos on our different social media platforms and other media houses that put videos where you see men jumping over fences and trying to gain access to your property. So we now have to step up our game in trying to protect our property, protect our property in a legal manner. Because you know there are some circumstances, but at the end of the day, the law caters for us to take you, the individual, to utilize all legal measures to protect your property. And this morning we are trying, for the week you will hear our media ambassadors trying to bring to you all, to the public, several different tips of protecting your property. Now, some persons might have more finances in terms of the level of security that they can put, but there are simple things that we can do. I mean, how many of us clean around our property? Cut the verges, cut the trees. You know, trees are hanging, leaving from straight into all the way up into your roof. Any opportunity where you can reduce the avenue for a criminal to use that to get into your property, you gotta try. Simple thing as planting roses. Roses do a lot of damages, yeah? Right, those thorns, a rose, it beautifies your home, but believe you me, if you get stuck into a rose plant, it causes some serious damages to you.
Rose and bougainvillea.
Right?
I have experience with that.
So, by simply planting along your fence line, into your property, some roses.
Keeping things clear.
Right? There are things,
keeping things lit.
Yes, keep it on your verandas, heading up to your windows, window ledges and kind of thing. You plant certain things that could help deter persons or slow those individuals down from gaining access. How many of us look at the type of doors that we have? A simple thing as a door. Do we have a double lock? Do we have a proper door?
People can't afford to.
Exactly, but you can't afford a latch. So I'm not saying putting no security system that is going to be expensive, but just adding another a latch onto your door gives you one level, one layer, additional layer, because the normal doors, you may not be able to afford an expensive security type door, but the normal panel door, you can put in an additional latch.
So we're going to have to take the break for news. Just the overall, because you're talking about protecting property, so not just the home invasions, but also the situation where a business, it seems small, but I guess the interesting thing is, maybe because it was small, of just a dispute over a parking spot of a business. And I know I've been in that situation of very different circumstances, but I've been in a situation where you're trying to tell people, listen, this is not a parking spot, this is a access way for the business, please don't park there, and so on and so on. There's various ways it could come out. But even these small confrontations now, we kind of take it for granted and they could turn into big. And this is a lesson that maybe people should have with their home as well, that with regards to their neighbors and what might seem like trespassing but not a big deal.
Exactly.
How you treat with it now, you do have to be careful and consider the risks of everything.
And remember, some time ago in another program, we talk about engaging your community and developing the community groups as a measure of stepping up a level of security within your community, right? So there are a lot of things that we can do, but are we willing to do it, right? If you go on the internet and search on the internet, there are hundreds of tips, simple tips that we can do to alleviate some of this situation, right? And from our CPEPTID program, where when you're using community engagement, cleaning out old buildings, cleaning up of the lots that are overrun by vegetation and old rubbish and all of them things like that, additional lighting on the streets from a community perspective. If you take that same community approach and bring it back to your home, your personal protection, you need to do the same in your house.
Yeah, I agree with you, but let's continue this conversation after this break here on WESN, because you know, I hear you acting ESP. I agree with many of things that you're stating, but the investigation, is this happening? Is this to continue? But I think half the people never hear anything that comes out of these investigations. So after the break, we'll get back into this conversation.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. PNM nomination day today. 15-year-old boy shot dead. Ministry of Health sends advisory on influenza. And internationally, over 22 dead in Venezuela landslides. Now for the details. It's nomination day for the PNM. Nominations opened from 8 a.m. and will run until 4 p.m. today for the party's upcoming executive elections. Voting will be a 3-day process over November 26th to 27th, with the final leg at the PNM's convention on December 4th. The 16 posts, including leadership held by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, are open for contest. The term is until 2026. A 15-year-old boy is dead following what police believed to be an altercation between him and another boy. His body was discovered dumped behind a plug shop on Saturday night. Videsh Dukran was a Form 3 student of the St. Madeleine Secondary School. Reports say that an unidentified woman made an anonymous report that her children were in the company of Videsh when one of them accidentally shot him. Police are continuing investigations. The Ministry of Health has advised the public that there have been 346 confirmed cases of the influenza virus in Trinidad and Tobago. The cases, representing 48% males and 52% females, were recorded over the period July to October. The public is advised that the influenza virus may be more severe than the common cold. If you experience shortness of breath or any other severe symptom, you are asked to seek immediate medical care. In international news now, deadly landslides have swept away homes in Venezuela's Las Tejerías city, south of the capital Caracas. At least 22 people have been reported dead and a further 52 are missing after the torrential rainfall caused by La Niña weather pattern. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez visited one of the worst affected areas on Sunday. Rescue services are working to find those still missing, she said. President Nicolas Maduro described the situation as difficult and painful. About 1,000 emergency personnel were taking part in search and rescue operations, Deputy Civil Protection Minister Carlos Perez Ampueda added. Well, that was News to the Hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Thank you very much to our head of news for WSN's News on the Hour, Denise Sinclair. But as we continue the conversation, Acting ASP Ali, thank you for joining us. But in this investigation, which is currently being carried out, I think the SRP was released pending the investigation, not remanded. Very interesting, actually. But would the police, during the course of the investigation, which could take years, it shouldn't take years, but it could take years, release information such as whether or not it was his personal firearm, a security company's firearm, or the police firearm? When was the last time he went through mandatory training, such as the refreshers? I mean, would we get this information, which will be shared with the public during the course of the investigation?
Well, I want to be able to say yes for now, because each investigation is unique in these circumstances. But what we are trying to do in the police service at this point in time is that we want to be able to be as transparent as possible with investigations involving police officers, and I'm sure that once those type of information is forthcoming through our corporate communications department, we will have the commissioner will make a media release to inform the public as to what the circumstances were. If there are instances during the investigation that can hamper a court matter, once the situation goes that, I mean, he will determine to the extent of what can be divulged, right? But this is part of our transparency that we are trying to build trust and confidence in the public, to bring information to the public on these circumstances, because we know these are public interest stories, and the loss of a father, a husband, brother, sister, a death in a circumstance where involving a police officer, where the video, we only see parts of the video, we don't know the entire circumstance, so we're only judging from what we have seen on social medias, but there are a lot of things that the investigation may reveal. So yes, as soon as information is forthcoming, it will be shared to the media.
I think it goes without saying, just this is a good example as to why don't get involved in any sort of altercation. You have nothing to prove, and his kids was there, which actually to some extent makes me feel it's one thing to take a risk when you're on your own. Your kids, especially if your kids are there, you have nothing to prove. You're not less of a man, because who knows how things might turn out if it continues to escalate. But speaking of escalation, you were talking about home invasions before. One of the things that we did not get into, you were looking at basic ways to try to prevent or make your house, less attractive to break-ins. But what happens now when the attempt is there or they're actually in? What could you advise viewers to do? I mean, obviously, call the police. We saw that it worked out in the previous or the latest high-profile case. But with regards to, you have the criminal element now, what advice do you have for people so that they could have hopefully a similar outcome where they're able to survive and not have to have such a terrible outcome like what we saw in the shooting?
Right, so we have, in terms of calling, you don't necessarily, in some circumstances, you may not call the police. You may call the police, you may not be able to get through with them at a particular time. I am saying that call a family member, call a friend, call somebody in the community and inform them if you get that opportunity. When they make the call and say, hey, I am being robbed, simple as that, there are people in my house. Just simple thing. You don't need to go to specifics, but just information that you want to tell somebody what is taking place. Now, that is the first aspect of it. Once you get the opportunity to make that call or not, and if there are persons inside the house and you're already under the duress and you're under fear, comply. You don't need to aggravate the situation anymore, escalate or cause those persons to escalate, because you don't know what they can do. And at the end of the day, we can buy all the property back into in your home, but you can't purchase no life that has been lost. So we have to weigh the balance in that, and that's why we tell persons, yes, we understand that personal violation of your property, how the victim behaves in that situation right now, in that situation, when you put yourself in that situation, we can't speak to how you would behave if you never was in a situation like that. But generally, from the experience we have interacting with persons who have been victims, you realize that there are several different things that could happen. Some people retaliate immediately and they had the opportunity to speak about it. Some persons was complied with everything and they are happy today that there's a property they lost. Some persons lost their life in any circumstance. So you have to weigh that situation, assess that situation, which one is more valuable right now. Let's comply and hope that the persons leave, because we don't know the mindset of those individuals who just violate that house, what is their intention. But at the end of the day, I would tell the public, you have the right to protect your property. You legally have the right to protect your property, and if you get the opportunity to defend yourself, you defend yourself and defend your family.
Well, I actually, as we open up the phone lines, I think it's time, because we have a couple of minutes, about 80 minutes left. Let's get your calls in this morning where you could share your opinions with us, and you could also ask the acting ASP questions. If we haven't covered anything, yes, he's in the hot seat. He's in the hot seat. We've taken Sean out of the hot seat and we've put the acting ASP.
I'm never in the hot seat.
You're always in the hot seat.
My seat is cool.
You're always in the hot seat. But anyway, the phone lines are open. Call in and join us on Talking Point this morning. The numbers are up on your screen. Maybe there's something you'd like to comment besides this fatal shooting. Maybe you'd like to comment on the internal elections, or even the situation as it relates to the U.S. advisory. Quite a bit happening.
I feel I know what some of our callers might call in to comment on, but I won't give it away.
You make that statement and you wouldn't give it away?
I won't give it away. No. You'll know when you hear it. You'll know. But folks, call in.
We're calling on the line with us from Diggle Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, want to just put in a comment here pertaining to that unfortunate incident here. Well, I was observing on the news last night, really, when they interviewed the DC wife, and she said that one of the reporters asked her if he was smoking any illegal substance, and I heard that she said he smokes hemp. So I don't know if that would be anything in the case, but I have to say that this country is so lawless. She was there. The security officer came up and told you to move the vehicle. You're not allowed to park there. Why didn't you just go back into the car and remove it from there? Then she knows the temperament of her husband. And you're going to leave him there, and you're going to tell him, when you see them start to argue, you tell them, look, get out of the car and go and argue outside the car and then put each other. For God's sake, jump in the car and take the car out of the car, parking or say all of that.
Yeah.
I also suspect that why the officer drew his Python gun is because he's getting a bit winded in his struggle, and people seeming to be overpowering him. And I think that is where he packed up. He thought that he might have taken his gun from him. I think that is one of the problems there. You see, when he is a soldier, was a soldier,
yes,
you have certain tactical ways about you, just like in Taekwondo, all these things. I did Taekwondo, and I could have defended myself in a better situation. Twice I've been tried to rob, and I took them down.
Yeah.
So that is the whole point about it. So that is why when training comes, that is why you teach you that discipline to control yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
So you have a good morning and take care of yourselves. Thank you for taking.
I think your first point was very much relevant. I say I don't know why people continue to block people's gates, park, in active driveways or parking spots. But also, on the flip side, that SRP, from the look of the video, could have also shot him in the leg. From the look of that video, I can't know. I was in the situation,
just remember,
from the angle of the video.
Leg shots are not automatically less than lethal. But I think that point, yes, to the SRP, it could have been he was afraid of being overpowered and his gun taken away. But, that doesn't necessarily mean that the man was going for the gun. There's a lot to unpack there. We have a caller from St. Anne's, though. Good day.
Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
You're on the air.
Good morning. First, I have to say I have a great respect for police officers. I have a lot of police officers that are my friends. But I want to take that incident with the shooting there. too many police officers that are doing security work for private companies with and without permission. If you check Charlotte Street, the entire length of Charlotte Street, 90% of the security officers, they are police officers. So while they're guarding your private business, when it's time for them to be on duty to do policing, they're too tired to do it. And that's half the problem. And then a lot of them, because of these off-duty jobs they do, are usually done by kind of that same type of thing as the kind of bully. I'm not telling you the fellow who got shot was wrong. I don't want to get into that at all. But the police need to look at what their officers are doing. Right?
Yeah.
And that's my contribution.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller, for your contribution. So maybe acting SP, you could clear the air on this. Officers, he said with or without permission, which says that there are officers who are given permission to work when they're off duty as security officers. Is there clamping down on officers within the service who do not have permission and yet are still moonlighting?
Well, see, that has been an issue with respect to these type of things where officers on their own, not on duty, on their own private capacity, they may do some moonlighting on their own, and these are the risks that you run. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have had officers over the years that have been found moonlighting and have gotten themselves in situations like this. And we continue to, through the association and through the Office of the Commissioner, advise persons to desist from doing such a things, as well as business people. Business persons, if you're paying for police officers, it must be legitimate and legitimate payments. Now, all that being said and done, we can't assume or make inferences at this point in time. We know the full circumstances of this situation. We are just basing everything on a video and circumstances of information that's coming forth. Right? One of the things that the first caller spoke from Diego Martin was very important, that we don't know what is the level of training of the other individuals if you are not aware of your level of training. So that is where you need to understand that sometimes you interact with an individual and you make an assumption that because I am a particular individual, I am trained with this, I am trained with that, that individual that you're engaging with doesn't have that level of training. And that is what the caller was trying to indicate, that he was trained in martial arts, in some level of martial arts, and when he was attacked, he was able to defend himself. Yeah. So when you go into a situation, you need to assess your situation, understand everything that was taking place in the situation.
I understand that, Acting SP. We have a caller on line with us from Gasparillo. Good morning, caller. Hi, good morning. You're live.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Officer, are you allowed to moonlight with a firearm that belongs to the government?
So that is not, we don't allow moonlighting, right? What you allow is an extra duty where someone would have come to the station, or business person or some party would come and request the services of a police officer. And once they pay the relevant fees, you now will go to the
event.
To the event, you draw a firearm and you go to the event. Wow. There have been situations where persons and business persons would have facilitated officers who are not, who have their personal firearms and performing those type of duties. These are the situations that we do not authorize. It is not authorized in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, right? So you cannot moonlight with a government firearm, and if you do such, you run the risk of disciplinary actions and being put before the court for offenses.
And I think also, just to clarify, if this is what the caller was asking, because we've had this discussion before, as well as maybe even earlier in the episode, I can't remember, an SRP can work as a security guard.
Yes.
Right, just to be clear. But other officers now, they can't actually.
No. A regular police officer, police officer cannot work as a security guard at any establishment which is considered to be moonlighting, unless it is an authorized extra duty by the that is authorized by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Well, we have two callers on the line with us. First call from Shagonas. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
Morning. Sorry about that, Professor.
No problem. I think I'll tell you for the 51st time. The problem is not crime. The problem is law and order. You get order by enforcing your laws, and the biggest culprit but not enforcing the laws is the government and the police service. They find every reason not to enforce the law. I told you the entire Eastern Main Road is no parking. Anybody driving down that would never believe it.
That's true.
Major highway traffic jams is because people driving on the right-hand side of the road. And they have police officers on their bicycles and down there watching them and doing nothing. Right? And I could go through the list and show you all the problems I have mentioned time and time. And instead we have all kind of song and dance why the law cannot be enforced. When I was in the public service, we spent our time finding how the law could be enforced. Now it is not enforced. And lastly, on Karen, people say it is difficult. Of course it is difficult. She never said it was easy. But our political analysts try to find out who would win. What a proper analyst should do is who is coming up with the best solution to our problem. And if they do that, Karen is way in front. Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions?
Actually,
or as usual, you agree with me and forget
no,
it.
you might have to remind us for the 52nd time sometime later this week.
Yes.
Have a good one. Caller line with us from Gasparilla. Hello, good morning, caller. All right, okay, we've lost that call. We do apologize. Caller line with us from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Oh, hi, guys, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Well, today's World Mental Health Day, and WHO's theme is making mental health and well-being for all a global priority, and we know that there's a stigma attached to that here, which needs to be removed. 194 nations have been part of WHO's action plan from 2013 to 2030, and this outlines mainly national and workplace policies. So, for example, in the workplace, there needs to be more interventions which can reshape the way that we work. More help must be offered to those with certain conditions. More must be done to prevent factors which affect employees' well-being. Daily stresses that people have and before that they face just to get to work. They don't have basic amenities. All of these things matter. Regarding governments now, if we just look at us, the increased social and economic equity, increased violence, for heaven's sake, we talk about that like right now, and cumulative stress, I'm always saying, could cause people to just lose it, just flip out. We see that more and more. Just look at children in schools. We need more interventions for those children, proper policies by the ministry to guide the schools, or we're going to have a nation of misfits and a greater proportion of criminals. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution and for reminding us that today is World Mental Health Day. A final caller on the line with us for this morning's edition of the program from Port of Spain. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, this question is posed directly to the ASP.
Go ahead.
The question is, if this police officer, it is alleged that he's attached to the Guard and Emergency Branch, which is considered a trained and elite unit. If he is in hand-to-hand combat, no weapon, is it, or was he that trained in order to draw a firearm from behind his waist, as his back, as far as I can see, and fire 2 shots at an individual who was unarmed at the time, considered someone trained in the Guard and Emergency Branch? And was he moonlighting at the time? Which I believe. Thank you very much. I'll listen up.
Thank you very much.
Well, as I said, and I will continue to say that there's an ongoing investigation with respect to that. Bringing out the fact that he is directly bringing it to the fore that the officer has been has been attached to or currently attached to the Guard and Emergency Branch, and we all know that the Guard and Emergency Branch has a level of training different and apart from many of the police officers. That will be brought into to bear in an investigation, because I cannot say specifically just by that video where everybody is based in their opinion and their views of the situation. The video alone doesn't tell us the whole picture, right? And I am hopeful that the entire investigation will be brought to the fore, and so we will know what actually transpired. Training is important. It has always been part of the police service, and training and retraining officers to treat with situations and knowing how to deal with, handle different type of situations. But in certain circumstances, persons react differently. And this is a situation there where all amount of training that was utilized end up in, once someone dies in that training, in the incident, there will also always be a lot of questions whether the person was trained enough, wasn't trained too much, what type of training he gets, he should do this and he should do that. And all that is quite fair, and you're able to judge.
Has the police service ever considered that some officers may just consider training to pass their exam, and then beyond that forget about it completely and ignore it? Like, it doesn't bother them? And
that is not, I wouldn't say the police service alone. Training on your whole. If you are trained to do certain things and you're not practicing on a regular basis, that training is just training. So you have training and practice what you put, or practice what you preach, practice what you're trained to put into place. Yes, there are some who do the training just to fit the requirements of training, but there are a lot of officers who, in these circumstances, are trained to treat with situations. Now, one of the caller also mentioned about Mental Health Day, which we have to understand that there are lots of situations that persons are going through, and that is why police officers are also trained to assess certain situations, to understand that when you're going into a situation, you need to understand the whole, try to assess that whole situation in a short space of time to make the best decision as possible.
But speaking about that now, I do want to point out, for anybody that has to deal with customers in any capacity, I think one of the interesting things we need to realize is for the TTPS, we're all their customers, because that's the initiatives with regards to customer service, right? But imagine if in your retail job or in your company that is servicing a big business, and the big business is being an entitled, unreasonable customer. Part of that now is, imagine that a police officer potentially has to, especially the good ones who actually do the work. That is what we fail to realize. The good ones who do the work are under the most strain. The amount of potentially negative interactions that they have to deal with, on top of having to then face violent confrontation. So it's something that we should also be aware of. It does work both ways. It does. As well, because the people that the police interact with, as you were alluding to, we don't know what they're going through either. But we do have to at least have some consideration for the fact of what we're asking the TTPS. We want to hold them accountable and to a high standard, but we have to be fair as well and realize the difficulties of the job. And if we're in a position where we could make it less difficult, we should do so.
I was just going to add to that too.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Just to add to it in this context, once police officers, and right now the police officers are in fact trying to continue enforcing the laws. We as a society love to break the laws, and when called upon to answer why, is always a question: why is me? Why telling me about it? Why you talk about this one and that one? The fact of the matter, you did in fact break the law.
Yeah.
Right. So when you start to have the engagements where we consider these things as petty infringements, confrontation will be part of the situation, and how we treat with the confrontation. So we continue to say over a period of time, and our media ambassadors and the commissioners has also reiterated that when we are in an asking the public, when you're engaging with the police, please abide by what the officer is telling you. Follow the instructions. There is no need to have confrontation or start to argue with the officer. If the officer is telling you, desist from doing something that you know that you are in the wrong, wrong and strong. That is how it is going to be. You're wrong and strong. Yes, the officer may speak to you in a particular manner, but at the end of the day, you were wrong. And I'm not talking about in this situation, but generally, if an officer doesn't stop you because he just feels to stop you, you're committing an offense, and he's bringing to your attention. Some officers may listen to your excuse and deem it to be realistic or reasonable, and give you an opportunity to change your ways. But that doesn't mean that you have not been warned about your offense, right? And that is the discretion that a police officer have.
I think you've more or less, in a way, elaborated on what I wanted to say, to add to both of you all. You said, yes, we want to hold police officers to account. How often do we hold ourselves to account? Or those around us to account? You know, because it's always easy to point fingers and chastise, but I mean, oftentimes do we even look at ourselves, our actions, our words, our behaviors, which could lead to these things. Anyway, folks, I want to thank all our callers for their contribution this morning. I want to thank Acting ASP Ashraf Ali for joining us on Talking Point once more. Always a pleasure to thank you. To Sean Michael Small, with the time that we have, I will simply say, today is a good day to have a good day, and a great start to the week ahead. May be productive, and certainly may lead to positive things, positive changes, only positivity. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talking Points on WESN, the content capital. Stay tuned for more local content, Caribbean content throughout the day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN